Imagine this. You have an entire nation of people who have been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. They are right on the edge of entering their promised land. But there's one last thing in their way, a massive, raging, flooded river. So let's dive into how the book of Joshua breaks down this incredible story.
This is the big question, right? It's not just any river. It's the Jordan River, and it's at its absolute peak, overflowing its banks. This isn't a problem you're going to solve with some clever engineering. No, this requires something else entirely.
Okay, so first, let's just take a second to appreciate the sheer scale of this challenge. The story is meticulously set up to show us that, humanly speaking, this was an absolutely impossible crossing.
So picture this. They're all there, standing at the water's edge. The text makes a point of telling us the river is at flood stage. That little detail is there to really amplify the miracle that's about to happen. You couldn't just wade across this thing. And instead of charging ahead, they're told to just wait for 3 days. You can just feel the anticipation building. Now, what's really interesting here is the object that's going to lead the way. The Ark of the Covenant wasn't just some religious box. It was understood to be the literal throne of God on earth. It was the focal point of His presence. So wherever the Ark went, that's where God was leading.
And here's a really fascinating instruction. Follow the Ark, but don't get too close. They are specifically told to keep a distance of almost a kilometer. This creates such a powerful visual, right? It's all about emphasizing the theme of holiness. God is right there, leading the way, but a clear, reverent distance has to be maintained.
But here's the thing. This story isn't really about getting from point A to point B. The way the story is told focuses so much more on how they get there, and that's what reveals its true meaning.
Yeah, this is the crucial part. The author deliberately hits the brakes here. The narrative slows way down. It's less concerned with the destination and much more interested in the how. It's building all this suspense around the incredible divine intervention that's about to happen.
And this is just brilliant. The writer is deliberately creating an echo of the past. Think about it. The miracle at the Red Sea marked the birth of the nation. Now this miracle at the Jordan marks the entry of a whole new generation into their inheritance. And get this, the text even uses the exact same special Hebrew word for dry ground in both stories, tying these two defining moments together forever.
You know, this might be the most telling detail of the whole chapter. In the original Hebrew, the sentence is all about the water. The main verbs describe the water stopping and piling up. And this part right here, the people passed over, it's actually grammatically secondary. It's almost like the author is saying, God did this incredible thing with the water, and oh yeah, by the way, the people crossed. The miracle is the main event.
So as you can see, this whole event is just layered with meaning. It was designed to teach, to build confidence, and to inspire awe. Let's start peeling back some of those layers.
The word know pops up 3 strategic times. It's like a ladder of certainty they're meant to climb. First, follow the ark so you can know the way to go. Second, God promises to exalt Joshua so that you'll know that God is with him, just like he was with Moses. And third, the miracle itself is the final proof, so that you will know the living God is among you. It's just a masterful way to build confidence.
Another huge theme here is obedience. And look at this. The wording between the command that was given and the report of what actually happened is almost identical. The narrator is really hammering this point home. The people followed the instructions exactly as they were given. But it wasn't just about the people's obedience. The story also zooms in on the divine stamp of approval for their new leader. Right in the middle of all these instructions for the nation, God makes one very specific, very personal promise directly to Joshua.
And what do you know? We see the immediate fulfillment of that promise. It's this perfect, self-contained loop. Before the crossing, God says, I'm going to exalt you. And right after, the text confirms, yep, it happened. It's a powerful little demonstration of God's faithfulness right inside the bigger story. But the story doesn't end when the last person steps onto the western bank. No way. An event this huge had to be permanently memorialized. It had to be something that would ensure it was never, ever forgotten. So they are told to go back into the middle of the Jordan, you know, the place that would soon be a raging river again, and get 12 stones, one for each tribe. These weren't just any old rocks. They were stones from the very spot where the miracle happened. And here's the brilliant part. The whole point of this memorial was to start a conversation for generations to come. It's this incredible piece of foresight, right? The monument isn't just there to mark a location. It's literally built to make someone ask a question.
And the answer they're supposed to give is so key. Notice what they're not supposed to say. They don't say, "This is where we crossed the river." They're told to say, "This is where the waters of the Jordan were cut off." Once again, the focus is driven right back to the miracle, to God's power, not the human action of just walking across.
So, why? Why do all this? Why such a public, dramatic, and unforgettable display of power? Well, the text doesn't make us guess. It gives us the answer directly.
The miracle was basically designed for two different audiences. The first audience was external. It was a message to all the surrounding nations about the power of Israel's God. The second was internal. It was a lesson for the Israelites themselves, designed to create a permanent sense of reverence and awe.
And the author doesn't leave us hanging. You don't have to wait long to see the payoff for that first audience, the external one. We see the impact almost immediately in the story.
And boom, there it is. The very next chapter kicks off by telling us that when the enemy kings heard the news about the Jordan crossing, their courage just completely collapsed. Their hearts melted. The miracle acted as a kind of psychological warfare, fulfilling its purpose before a single battle was even fought.
It just leaves us with this really powerful idea to think about. The crossing wasn't just some obstacle to get through. It was a memory to be built. And it makes you wonder, what are the memorial stones in our own histories? What are the events in our lives that are designed not just to be experienced in the moment, but to be remembered and retold forever?